Hello and welcome back to the Checkpoint Reach podcast. I'm your host Luke Eldon, and this is a podcast that will discuss the latest gaming and movie news. I'm also joined by my fellow two gamers, Matty and Sud. How are you doing, guys?
Good, Luke. Very good, Luke. How are you doing today?
Good, yeah, I'm good. How are you, Matt?
All right, fella. Just another day closer to death.
Oh, happy
Nice
outlook
and positive.
Yeah, gotta have that positive outlook in time for Christmas.
Yeah, that you do. Well, in a happy turn of events, we actually have a guest on today. You've heard about him in the previous two podcasts. He's back from the dead. James Perkins. How you doing, Perks?
As you can probably tell by the sound of my voice, I'm delighted to finally be here.
You sound it.
Yeah, sound like you've recovered from that grave pretty well.
Yeah, as you can tell, it's still ongoing, so I'm not going to get my hopes up too much yet, but yeah, things aren't going as bad as they might sound.
It's nice that the people can finally hear your voice. They've
It
been
is.
awaiting this for a long time.
Yeah.
And in a week's time, they'll hear a different voice, but yeah.
Is that
Oh, they've been hearing a different voice.
is that you
Is that
confirming?
confirmation? Yeah.
Yeah.
Confirmation coming on every podcast now, are you?
Well, I'll see what I can do, providing I can stay out of the grave. It's something I'll look to try and fit in around that schedule.
There you
Busy
go.
I'm
schedule
sure
of being dead.
Sure, the viewers are going to value your input, so that's the main thing.
Viewers?
The millions and millions of fans we have out there, of course.
Yeah, for sure. They're gonna love your Perks.
All in good time, guys.
Well, we'll get started with our first topic, which is obviously going to be the Game Awards. And God of War wins, which comes as a bit of as a surprise because I believe we all expected Red Dead to win. So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
happy shock, I guess, especially for you, sir, because didn't you want God of War to win as your personal choice?
No, you got that wrong. It was Red Dead for me. I wanted Red Dead to win.
Oh, was it? I thought you enjoyed God of War more, though.
No, Red Dead was my game of the year. I just said I wouldn't be surprised if God of War won. But I didn't actually want it to
You
win.
know about the bung that they clearly give that Sony clearly give Jeff Keighley to fix the results, because that's usually what happens.
Well, I mean, I don't know if anyone else thought this as they were watching it, but as I was watching it, the more that time went on, the more I thought God of War might win. Just the way it was going. Because Red Dead, I think, won the first 3 awards, and you're thinking, oh, it's going to clean sweep. But then, I don't know, after a while, I just thought, this is not going to happen. I can't see Red Dead carrying on winning, and inevitably enough, that's what ended up happening. So, I'm not too shocked by the result. It wouldn't have been my pick, but at the end of the day, it's not a bad winner, is it? It's not like it's an absolute disgrace that it's won.
Yeah, they
You know,
were
it's
both
a great
great
game.
games. Obviously, like, we're just bringing personal feelings into it. Like, we both wanted Red Dead to win, but I can see how God of War won. It's not like it's some sort of travesty or something. God of War's a masterpiece as well, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, definitely. But I think we all thought, didn't we, that Red Dead would have enough to win, but that Sony's strong, isn't it? At the Game Awards, usually they've got a big presence there, so they've got a lot of fans voting for them. So I suppose it shouldn't be a massive shock. People value exclusives highly these days, don't they? So
yeah, the plan was all coming together for Dutch, and then just fell apart at the end.
exactly,
As it always
exactly, you
does.
failed. So we should have seen it coming, really, shouldn't we?
Yeah,
We should have. What did you think about it, Perks?
Yeah, I think like you guys touched on in the previous week before the show itself, you guys mentioned that there was not one sort of clear and obvious winner as such. There was a lot of games on that list that all sort of in another year would have taken the title quite easily. So I'm not overly surprised to see something other than Red Dead Redemption win it, given how strong the category was overall.
Yeah, I was still disappointed that Spider-Man didn't win it. That's my personal choice.
Didn't even win an award, Luke. Not a single award, Spider-Man.
I know, not one. That shows how good though the games have been this year. I think because Spider-Man
True.
was such a good game, but there were, to other people, well, the majority, there were better games out there.
Do you know what I would say about Spider-Man though? It was a really great game, but I don't think it excelled at any one thing over the others. I think that's why it didn't win any awards because there's not one thing in that game where you go something hasn't done it better. I think that's what I'd say.
Yeah,
I think that's why it didn't win an award, even though overall it was a great game.
yeah, no, that does make sense. I mean, I am actually still surprised that Red Dead didn't win. I thought it had it nailed on. I know you were talking about as the show went on that you thought God of War was going to win. I was the other way. I thought Red Dead was going to win the more the show went on.
I just got that sense because Red Dead won the first three awards. I thought there's no way that it's going to win everything. I just had a feeling that they were going to do something like that. There was going to be a curveball. I do wonder, as well. Obviously, the host especially, he must know what's won and stuff beforehand. And there's people that know, obviously, what's won before. And I do wonder whether they purposely, the categories for winners, I wonder whether they skew it on purpose to make it look, it's like a nice narrative, isn't it, for the Game Awards? Like, oh, well, Red Dead must surely, that's going to win, isn't it? Because it's won the first three. And then like, oh, what a shock. I do wonder whether it's planned like that on purpose.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it definitely adds more of a shock value to it.
Yeah, to give it a shock value, because then people talk about it, don't they? Like, oh, did you see the Game Awards? Did you see what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on that note, it's it would never be an interesting show, would it, if it was just the winner was Red Dead Redemption in every single category. So yeah, I'm not saying it's fixed, but they definitely have to
I'm saying it's fixed.
Spread things out a little bit. Otherwise, it would just, for the first time it happened, it would probably be interesting because people would be talking about it like, God, have you seen it's won every single award it could have possibly won?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the times after that, it would probably take some shine off the awards themselves.
Yeah, I need to provide some context because I really loved God of War. I thought it was fucking brilliant. When I played it, how much I was raving about this game, saying this is one of the best games I've played, of the generation. But my main reasoning for thinking the whole award is completely and utterly just garbage, made up, and it's just Jeff Keighley who sits in a room on his own and makes up the winners. Just because if you were going to describe God of War to me, or I was going to describe God of War to you, I know you've played through it as well, Sud. You'd say that the narrative is the strongest part of that game. The combat's good. Like, you don't get me wrong, it's nice. They took it to sort of Dark Souls. Every game now is just trying to copy Dark Souls, but the whole game is based on the narrative. Red Dead wins best narrative, but not best game. I don't understand the logic behind that.
Yeah, I know
doesn't
what you're
make any
saying.
sense to me. It's like if both those games, their main focus, because that's some people are going to disagree with me, but both Red Dead and God of War. God of War's got better gameplay than Red Dead, but both of them, their gameplay isn't the strongest point of the game. Especially Red Dead, like the controls are really finicky. You don't really have there's not that continuous gameplay loop that sucks you back in. It's the narrative and the world that draws you into that game. So they're both relying heavily on the narrative aspect of the game. God of War wins Game of the Year, but doesn't win Best Narrative. Doesn't make any sense. Like you said, it's just a way to make people go, oh, look, everyone's got a chance. Red Dead, the big juggernaut, defeated by, measly Sony and their tiny studios that they make out of got about 2 people in when there's 300 people working for them, but whatever.
I would slightly agree with that. I think expectation's a big thing as well. Like you kind of hinted on that. I think people expected Red Dead to win. People knew Red Dead was going to be a great game. But I think going into God of War, people were skeptical, weren't they? Because the God of War franchise has always been a good franchise and they've been good games. But I don't think any of the God of War games that people have gone, oh, that's an absolutely incredible game before this one. They've always been good to average, haven't they? A lot of the God of Wars, and I think expectation plays a big part. This was an unexpected masterpiece, wasn't it? Really. Whereas Red Dead, people knew it was going to be a great game, so I do think that plays a part as well.
Yeah, I think God of War's been consistently good now for years and years and years, but for it to sort of jump to the forefront and be, game of the year was probably a surprise in itself. But
it's a big leap, isn't it?
Yeah, to go from like Sid mentioned there, it's been consistently good for a long time, probably better than just average for a long time. But Yeah, I think in terms of the categories themselves, he probably could have seen it as the action adventure type winner, and I think the majority of people probably would have had Red Dead in the actual Game of the Year slot, and then God of War is perhaps a close second or third place. But it's I think it's interesting that it wasn't just completely as expected.
Well, it's funny actually. Just one point that's made there about it won action adventure. I don't know if I think it won an award earlier in the night, and you know where they sometimes say God of War also wins. They said God of War also wins action adventure, and that made me think, well, it's definitely winning Game of the Year then, because God of War, Red Dead Redemption was in the action adventure category as well. So as soon as God of War, you heard that it won the action adventure category, we should have known it was going to win Game of the Year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it was at the same time it had won another award, because I remember Corey Balrog, the game, he went up, didn't he, to accept it, and they said, it's also, God of War's also won the action adventure category, and as soon as it wins that, they can't possibly not give it Game of the Year after that. So
yeah, maybe that was a little indication to what was going to happen later on in the night then.
Yeah.
What did we think of the Game Awards as a show altogether? Because obviously it was quite a long night. I mean, was it around 3 hours?
Oh, it was so long, wasn't it?
It
It was too long. It was too long. I enjoyed the show as a whole. I really did enjoy it. I thought it's the best Game Awards I've seen by a mile. They've definitely... I think Jeff Keighley has done a good job, because he's listened to feedback from previous years, because I remember me and Matty have watched them in the past, so many cringy moments in some of them. Oh, really awful moments. The wrong type of music. I know what you mean.
I like it when E3 and gaming was a little bit kooky and a little bit weird, and you had people that clearly didn't know what they were doing going on stage, and you didn't know whether they were just going to fall apart, because it's like they've never even been in a room with more than 10 people and delivered a presentation before, and then all of a sudden they're in E3 in front of 5,000 people. It's just funny to see. I did sort of like that element of the games industry. I know why it's moving away from that, because it's become huge, it's become massive, it's the absolute pinnacle of the entertainment industry now in terms of money making. Absolute number one.
Yeah.
So I know why these events have got more glitz and glamour, but I do sort of miss these sort of old days in a way. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I liked it when games weren't as mainstream as they are.
Do you not prefer the more structured approach, though, where it's not as silly, it's a bit more professional?
Yeah, I think it's good to have that, and obviously it legitimizes the industry for people who are still skeptical for some reason as to whether or not it's like a pure art form and stuff. All these people that sit on their high horses and go, "Oh, video games."
You still got your silly aspect. I mean, that Crash Bandicoot mascot springs to mind. When you just
That was a
cross
nice
chopping or
fun
whatever.
way of introducing the trailer, I suppose. Yeah, but I suppose it is silly. But I think what I liked about the Game Awards the most, I would say, is this year. I think their content in terms of the games they had there to show were probably the best they've ever had. Like in previous year, I know there was quite a few indie games that we probably don't care about too much, but in previous years, I don't think the quality of the trailers has been very good, and the games haven't been that great. But they actually showed off some cool stuff this year, and that interests people. So I think that's an improvement.
Yeah, definitely, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well.
Yep.
Some of the trailers. So, what are your thoughts overall on the host as well, Jeff Keighley? I mean, are you guys a fan of him?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's. You can't. At the end of the day, he's done a great job with this Game Awards, because he's pretty much single-handedly created it originally, and then he obviously does get help from other people and stuff. But it was his idea, wasn't it? So without him, we wouldn't have it. So you have to give him a lot of credit for it. And he's listened to feedback at the end of the day. He's done well to listen to feedback, because he has improved it year on year. It's improving, and it's like, I think someone actually said it at the Game Awards themselves, didn't they? Like, in another 5 years, it could be. It's never going to be as big as the Oscars, obviously, but it could be, more up there.
I don't know. Why can't it be as big as the Oscars?
I just think movies have a more widespread appeal in general to people. I think that will continue.
The people that are used to movies having widespread appeal are slowly dying like Perks.
I think movies are always going to be relevant. I don't think movies
quickly
are
dying like Perks.
Yeah. Well, of course, movies are always going to be relevant, but if you're looking at the trend of what's trending upwards and what's trending downwards, and you look at gaming versus going to the cinema, I'm pretty sure you'll see that the trends are going up. You do still get the odd massive movie like Avengers, but in general, like cinemas, like movies are dying, which I don't want them to because I love a good film.
I'm not sure movies are dying. I think cinema might be dying,
Yeah.
but I think movies in general. There'll always be it's just different platforms. They're just moving to different platforms. They're on Netflix now. They're on the. I think you're right about cinema. I think cinema might. I don't want cinema to die because I love the cinema. But
It's really expensive. I think that's the biggest problem. Whereas you can
Do you
sit
not
at
think-
home and watch Netflix.
yeah,
Do you
true.
not think that big AAA movies, like the ones with these massive budgets, need that cash injection of people going to the cinema and watching it for them to exist in the first place? Because I don't think they're going to be able to afford to make look at the budget for something like Avengers and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
massive.
I don't think they're going to be able to afford to make that in the future if it's not at the cinema, because you need that initial injection of cash and then it gets distributed on other platforms afterwards. It's like putting Avengers 5 on Netflix or whatever streaming service it'll be on going to generate them enough money.
Depends how much Netflix are willing to pay for it. If Netflix are willing to pay millions upon millions for it, then maybe. But then would Netflix go bankrupt because of it? Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. But I do think the way it is at the minute, it wouldn't work. But we don't know what's going to happen in 20 or 30 years' time, do we? So
No, we don't.
things are going to change. So I think there'll always be a place for movies. I do agree with. I know what you're trying to say. I think gaming's going to become more and more and more mainstream as we go ahead. And maybe one day, you're right. Maybe movies, movies and games will have the same relevance. But I think right now, you'd say movies still have the greater, wider global appeal.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. But gaming
Yeah.
is growing. It definitely is a growing industry, of course. It's hit like Matty said, the pinnacle of the entertainment world at the moment. But it's kind of hard to say will it be as big as movies or like the Game Awards as big as the Oscars just yet, because you get obviously a lot more casual people who will watch a movie than play a game.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the viewing figures. I'm pretty sure if you looked at the viewing figures for the last Oscars and the Game Awards, there'd be a night and day difference.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I really do. I think there'd be a massive difference. I think the Oscars would be at least 10 to 1, if not more, to be honest.
I've never
The
watched
Oscars
so I don't know.
No, I agree. I'd rather watch the Game Awards than the Oscars as well. But,
Yeah, well, with gamers, like that's
yeah. But I just think overall wide, there's a bigger demographic, I think, with Oscars and movies than there is with, the Game Awards is obviously going to grow and more and more people are going to end up watching it in the future. And there's an argument, will the Game Awards one day be on TV? Maybe, possibly. But
yeah,
I think right now,
do you think terrestrial there's any point in putting stuff like the Game Awards on TV though? Because everyone who wants to watch it's going to have the internet anyway.
True, that's a good point.
I wouldn't be
But the
surprised
Oscars
if
is
it was
on TV,
on
isn't
both.
it? So
Yeah,
it'll still obviously be on the internet. It'll still obviously be streamed, but I just don't think there's any point in putting it on TV, to be honest.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it goes. I still
every sort of gaming channel they've ever tried on like Sky or whatever has literally folded in about 2 weeks because no one watches it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think you make a good point there in the sense that if it was just on TV, in the sense that it was on a back end channel that nobody ever switched onto anyway, then it's completely pointless to just pigeonhole it in there and just for the sake of saying it's on TV. It would have to be broadcast in a way that was actually big rather than just sort of kept in the back like that.
Yeah, and do you know what else would be interesting to stream channel? I would love to see an experiment where, say this year, they just went, you know what, we'll just put it on a mainstream channel, the Game Awards. It'd be interesting to see the viewing figures.
It's what BBC or someone needs to do to like gain relevancy again, because it's only like people who are in their 50s that even watch BBC anymore.
But I would be very interested, say, like you say, it did go on like a mainstream channel, if to see what the figures actually would be compared to like the soap awards or whatever we have the equivalent of here.
God, yeah. They're horrendously boring.
Yeah.
People watch them though, don't they? They get viewing figures of 10, 15 million every time.
They do. They do. Can't argue with that. Well, moving on. Well, moving back to the Game Awards. It was also a pretty big moment where Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft all appeared on the stage at the same time. Reggie, Sean, and Phil. What are your thoughts on that? That was a pretty big moment in the gaming industry.
Missed opportunity.
Hmm.
They should have announced crossplay. It was perfect.
I think that's what we all thought, didn't we? When
Yeah.
we thought there's going to be some big announcement there, and then it just never happened. But
No.
you've got to say that you're talking about Jeff Keighley before. I mean, he's made that happen, hasn't he?
He's got good connections.
He's got good connections. He's made that happen. Well, none of us thought that would be possible 2 or 3 years ago. So credit to him for doing it. It was a nice little moment, but in the grand scheme of things, when we look back, does it really mean anything? Because nothing's come of it, has it really? So
No.
I don't know how important it's going to end up being, to be honest with you.
Also, I think people over-exaggerate how big this massive rivalry is between them. Like, there's some sort of infighting or something going on between them. I think the executives all get on. I think as companies, they all get on. They share technology. Microsoft's using Blu-ray in their Xbox and stuff. They all share like similar technology. I just think the sort of war, as you want to piece it, has just been made by 12-year-olds on the internet. That can only afford one console and literally will sit there and type until their fingers are red raw, trying to defend a piece of bloody technology.
We were once those 12-year-olds.
Yeah, but instead of just playing games, just enjoy the games, man, because this is literally a golden age at the moment for video games. Because it just seems like at the moment, every game that comes out, you get the odd sort of dud, but 90% of them are actually brilliant now. It's like gaming is really maturing as a medium, and it is really good to see. So
I'd also say as well, Matty's right about the overblown console wars, because at the end of the day, look at it from Microsoft's point of view. Are their main rivals Nintendo and Sony? No, they're not. Their main rivals are probably Amazon and Google. So on a wider scale, Sony and Nintendo to Microsoft are probably not even really seen as competition, to be honest. Especially with the way it's going with the digital future, Amazon and Google are going to be much, much bigger rivals in the future.
I just hope Xbox and Nintendo and their insistence on, Rocket League, Minecraft, Fortnite, anything that they can get crossplay, they are getting crossplay to work. And I just hope Sony join in on that, because it'll be really good to see, just gaming unlocked, people allowed to play on whatever system, whatever console, whatever platform they desire, against their friends. Their friends aren't locked away in a different ecosystem. Everyone can just play together. It'll be an amazing day when that finally actually happens.
I don't think it's going to happen for next generation, but you could possibly see the generation after that maybe. But
do you believe it'll happen?
Eventually,
now
yeah.
That Sony have folded on Fortnite and they've allowed crossplay, I think that's the first step.
I do think, though, the one thing I don't want to see eroded, and I don't think we will see it eroded, I don't want to see exclusivity eroded, because I think that's one of the reasons why you choose the console at the end of the day. I don't want to see a scenario where they share games between each other, because I don't want to be. I know people might disagree with this. I don't want to be seeing like Halo on PlayStation or God of War on Xbox, because I think they need to maintain an identity. So. Because there's rumours, isn't there, with Xbox in the future might have Game Pass on the Switch or Game Pass on a PlayStation. I don't know. I don't know if I'm comfortable with the idea of Halo being on a PlayStation.
Yeah.
It just seems strange to me.
It
wouldn't feel right.
It would be a weird day, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I just think, what's the point then? It might look, if you've got if you've got an Xbox and you're seeing Game Pass on your PlayStation, why would you ever buy an Xbox? Because you can just play every Xbox exclusive on your PlayStation. To me, it just seems
but it
silly.
Wouldn't matter, because Microsoft is still making money, so I don't understand.
They are still making money. I understand what you're saying, but they're going to lose massive sales on the console. I know it might not matter in the future, but I just think maybe not yet anyway. I think it's too soon for that. I think it'd be silly to start doing that in the next few years.
There's going to be a massive shift. I think Microsoft are already preparing for it in a massive way. But there is going to be a big, big shift in the way that we think about consoles in the next 10 years.
But would you not? If it was you, Matt, you'd just buy a PlayStation, right? If that was the case.
What if you could play every Xbox game on the PlayStation?
Yeah, why would you need an Xbox?
I probably wouldn't, just because of the controller and the ecosystem. Like having all my achievements and my saves.
But I think you'd be in the minority on that view.
Yeah, of course I would, but that doesn't really matter. It's just, I don't know. Exclusives are great, and yes, they do build the identity of the console. As soon as you say Xbox, you think of Halo, you think of Gears of War, you think of Forza. As soon as you say PlayStation, you think of God of War, you think of Uncharted, you think of The Last of Us, and Nintendo. Obviously, you think of Mario, Zelda, Pokemon. They have formed our opinions of these companies, but I don't understand what the bad thing is if everyone was like, "Hey, Pokemon, let's go. You don't need a Switch to play it anymore. You can play it on whatever you want." I don't understand why that's bad for consumers. It's good for consumers because I don't have to go out and spend 300 quid on a Nintendo Switch to play it. I can play it on what I want.
But what would be Nintendo's identity if it was on everything? That's my question.
Doesn't
That's
really
the
matter.
issue I have with it. I know. I just
Publishers that make games and solely make games and don't make any hardware, like Bethesda, they still have an identity. Their
true.
identity isn't tied to hardware. You think
That's
of Bethesda,
true.
you think of Fallout, and you think of that'll still be the same. You still think of Nintendo and think of Mario and Pokemon and stuff. It just doesn't. Their games and their experiences aren't tied to a piece of hardware.
I suppose what you're trying to say is that basically, in the end, they're all going to become software companies.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and there's not really going to be the hardware will be a laptop or a phone or a PC.
Yeah.
It might still be called Xbox or whatever. It might not be anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, that's an
just be
interesting.
streaming it.
It is an interesting way of looking at it, and that seems like the way Microsoft envisages the future, anyway.
Well, they talk about like the cloud, don't they? Moving
Yeah.
forward, so you don't even need basically a console in the future to game. Well, that's the sort of movement they want to make.
I suppose it depends how you view. I kind of like the old way. I don't know about anyone else. I like the way it's done now, and yeah, obviously things change and we all have to move with the times. I understand that, but it's going to be quite hard at first, I think, to adjust.
We're going to be
quite strange.
Old bitter men saying, "Back in my day."
Yeah, exactly, probably, but things move on, I suppose.
Yeah, that they do, and we'll move on to the next part then of that I wanted to discuss at the Game Awards, or that we've seen at the Game Awards. A couple of trailers that obviously came out. I'm going to start with Far Cry New Dawn, which is a post-apocalyptic game. If you haven't completed Far Cry, it basically is a continuation from Far Cry. Was it Far Cry 5?
Yeah, Far Cry 5.
Yeah. It looked pretty good actually, I thought. I enjoyed Far Cry 5, so I'm definitely going to give it a try. I'm quite excited actually. It's quite a vibrant game by the looks of it. It was quite colourful, wasn't it?
Yeah, I like the trailer. I thought it was one of the best trailers at the Game Awards. I was a massive fan, same as you, of Far Cry 5, one of my favourite games of the year. Wasn't a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but it was fun. It was a fun game to play, and I enjoyed the story. I thought the story was one of the strongest parts of the game.
I agree with you.
The characters were really
fun.
good as well. Some of the characters were hilarious, weren't they? Really funny. So I hope that it maintains that in this new one. It looks like they've gone for the Fallout vibe, haven't they? With the post-apocalyptic setting.
They have just a more colourful version, though.
Yeah, it reminds me of another game that's coming out this year, Rage 2. It looks very similar to that now, which is an interesting look for the game. But as long as, to me, I know I'm going to enjoy the game, because if it's got the same gameplay as Far Cry 5, then I can't say I wouldn't enjoy it, because the gameplay was really fun in that game, and the story was interesting. So I think it's going to be really good. I am surprised, though, how quickly it's coming out after Far Cry 5. Only a year, which is...
Ubisoft all over that.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. They do it with Assassin's Creed, so I don't want to be seen... I do hope, though, it takes a bit of a break after this. I don't want to be seeing Far Cry every year, to be honest.
No, I'm the same.
I'm happy for this one, because it's just a one-off, hopefully. But I'm happy for Far Cry to go away for 3 or 4 years after this, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't want an endless cycle of a game every year that's Far Cry. I'd get bored pretty quickly, I think. How about you, Perks? I know you've watched the trailer. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think to sort of follow on from what you guys have said there, not wanting the sort of same game released every single year with, just a new lick of paint or whatever it might be, because things do get boring over time. You look at what happened to Assassin's Creed before Odyssey, and, as a prime example, the same thing year on year with just a few different tweaks. It gets boring pretty quickly. But I think in terms of how New Dawn looks, like you guys touched on, it's sort of going down the post-apocalyptic route now, and it's, instead of being dark and grey and dingy, it's all bright and colourful, which isn't the only game that's doing that in the near future. So it seems to be a new trend to try and portray the apocalypse in a different way. The game looks interesting enough. I think from the trailer, the main thing that sort of spiked my interest was that there was some wacky death race type thing going on the dirt track. And I don't know what that's going to be, if that's like just a part of the game as a one-off, or if that's like a a
Wacky
replayable
racing
activity,
stuff.
like a racing type thing, or like a race slash deathmatch thing that will be available online, or whatever that turns out to be. But that looks pretty cool. And yeah, I think there's a rumor. I don't know if you guys could sort of confirm or deny this, but I've seen that there's a rumor it's actually going to just use the map that was Far Cry 5 anyway. So it's not
Yeah, I did
necessarily
see
a
that.
new
Yeah,
Far Cry game as such. It's almost
Yeah.
like an evolution
Expansion.
of Far Cry 5.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
maybe
seen
that's why
it.
it's coming out so quickly after Far
Yeah.
Cry 5, because it's probably reusing most of the assets of Far Cry 5, which
I
is
mean, that would
fine.
make sense for it to be an expansion a year on, if you like, even if they're not going to sort of portray it as an expansion. I think no one's going to be fooled by that.
To be honest, it
I do
makes
wonder
sense
about the
anyway.
price of the game. Yeah, yeah, I agree, Luke, but I do wonder about the price of the game.
$29.99.
I was thinking that. Is it going to be maybe a slightly cheaper? I mean, it wouldn't shock me if it wasn't. It wouldn't shock
No,
me
it
if it was
is
50 quid.
$29.99.
Oh, it actually is?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay then. Well, that would give credence to Perks' theory then about it pretty much being an expansion. Because if they're selling it for 30, I guess you could view it as an expansion, really. Even though, yeah, obviously it's a standalone thing as well. But
Maybe they
that's
need to put it at
interesting.
that price, because between the end of January and the sort of start of March is absolutely stacked with games.
Yeah, it is. It's
just
ridiculous.
stupid. I don't know what they do. They do the same thing every year.
I know.
You got Devil May Cry, Resident Evil Remake, Rage, Anthem,
Crackdown.
Metro Exodus, and
Yeah.
now Far Cry 5 as well. There's probably more
Division
stuff in
2.
there as well. The Division that are going to get buried. Some big game is going to get buried in that month. Probably Devil May Cry, unfortunately for me, because I want that to do well, and I just can't see it doing well.
There's going to be some losers, definitely. There's going to be some winners and losers in that period. It's going to be interesting to see which ones come out on top. But yeah, just going back to Far Cry, I think if it does come out for £30, which it seems like it is, then I think that helps the game a lot. I think a lot of people will pick it up at that price, because a lot of people, Far Cry 5 did sell well at the start of last year, so
Yeah, it's a good
I
price.
think that's a good idea to do what they're doing with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a smart move, I think.
I'm pretty sure it's cheaper as well if you own the game. If you own Far Cry 5 already.
That's a nice little incentive.
I might not have read that correctly, but I'm 90% sure that it's cheaper if you own a copy.
I
of the
like it when
original game.
companies do that, because it shows that they reward loyalty, I suppose.
Yeah, few and far between these days, though, in the gaming industry, isn't it? So
Yeah.
when a company actually does offer you something like that, it is a nice touch. Moving on then to another trailer that I wanted to talk about, which was the Anthem trailer. I think we discussed Anthem either last week or a few weeks ago, and we said that we hadn't seen too much from BioWare on this game. So now we've got more of a look. What are our thoughts on it?
You want me to start? I wasn't too impressed with it, to be honest. It looked a bit run of the mill and generic to me, which is not what I want really from this game. It's BioWare. I want it to be more interesting, really. But obviously, time will tell. You can't say the game's definitely going to be like terrible or boring just with one trailer. But I would have liked to have seen something a bit different. It looked very similar to Destiny for me, and that's fine, because I guess that's what they're going for, isn't it? That style. But I don't want it to be exactly the same as Destiny. You know what I mean? I want it to have a little bit more to it than that. So I don't know. When I was watching it, I think I said this to one of you earlier. You could have replaced the title with Destiny, and people would have thought it was like a new expansion for Destiny quite easily. That's the problem I have. Where's the distinction? Because if they can't distinguish themselves from Destiny, then they've pretty much already failed, as far as I'm concerned.
Think
But
that's
we'll
a good.
see.
Think that's a good time to bring Perks in. Our Destiny
Yeah,
fan.
yeah, exactly. So, without sort of going off on a tangent towards Destiny too much right now, I actually quite like the Anthem trailer. I thought the fact that they've sort of shown off a bit more of the narrative now in a wider sense, it actually looks quite interesting to me in terms of the freelancers themselves, and Anthem itself, and why there's this bad guy, or he's obviously going to be sort of taking control of everything, and things are going to be good against evil, and tried and tested method of sort of engagement. But I think it looks interesting enough. I do agree that it has to distinguish itself from Destiny in the sense that you're going to have Destiny, you're going to have Anthem, you're going to have the Division 2. It's unlikely that you're going to have players who are sort of going hard on all three games. They'll typically choose one, maybe sort of one and a half of them, because time just won't allow you to play Anthem hardcore and play Destiny as a hardcore player and play the Division as a hardcore player. So it's going to have something that sets it apart rather than just well, I was going to say strong narrative. We don't actually know because we've only seen what they've shown so far, but it looks like it could be interesting. It looks like they could run quite far with it.
Yeah,
I think Anthem itself will probably be defined in the customization more than anything else. And if that's poor and if it's not deep, then I don't see that game going too far.
Are you going to give it a chance? Because I know obviously how much you enjoy Destiny.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a chance because I think sort of touching there on the customization, it looks like it will be a lot more sort of in depth than what we have currently from Destiny. And that will be a nice change of pace for me. But it just depends on, just because something is more in depth and just because there are more options, that doesn't necessarily mean it hits the spot any more or any less. So it will be interesting to see how they pull it off for me.
I've got a question for you, Perks, because you're like one of the only people on the planet that still plays Destiny consistently.
Yeah, it's just me, no one else.
No, it isn't.
It's a
just you.
graveyard.
I was asking about the other people. The 10 people that are still left and play the raids with you. Are any of them talking about Anthem? Because I remember when the original Destiny was out, quite a lot of people were talking about the Division and hyping it up, and then it came out obviously, and they all just went back to Destiny because the Division was garbage. But
Yeah, so I think from my experience and the people that I play with on a sort of daily basis there, it is still a wide range of players. It's not the same ones all the time. The conversations about Anthem have pretty much been, it looks interesting, it looks cool. It probably won't replace Destiny. It's not going to kill Destiny. But if it can sort of hit a home run as much as it could potentially do so, then it may well sort of become the new leading light in the shared world shooter genre, if you like. But a lot will depend from the people that I've spoke to on how different it actually is, and how deep the game is from a narrative point of view that is actually there in front of you, and you don't have to sort of go diving too deep for like you have to do in the Destiny universe, and also in the customization of the freelancers and the javelins and so on.
yeah, well, me and Sud just buy every game that exists, but you're a bit more cautious with the money that you spend. If you had to pick one out of the Division and Anthem, which one would you buy?
I would go with Anthem just on the fact that I'm probably a little bit tainted from the first Division, but I think Anthem looks a bit more interesting to me personally. I prefer the futuristic sci-fi sort of Mass Effect-y looking way that they'll obviously, be able to, well, I say obviously, hopefully be able to pull off quite well given the successes in the past in that sense. But the Division for me is bottom of the list in terms of the three, just because I think it's a bit sort of samey. We've seen it before in the sense of the general sort of setting, whereas I think Anthem has a lot more to play with in terms of the freedom of what they can actually deliver.
Yeah, I think the big thing as well is the gameplay, isn't it? The gameplay's king in these games, and the first Division's gameplay was, I played it for probably 15 to 20 hours that game, and the gameplay's not good enough for it to be a Destiny killer or whatever you want to say. The reason Destiny's so successful is because the gameplay is the best out there. It's the best gameplay game there is out there, and that's why it's so successful, in my opinion. And I just think Anthem has a better chance of the gameplay loop, if you want to call it that, being far greater than Divisions. I think you played the beta, didn't you, Perts, of Division? The gameplay's just not. It's not good enough to sustain for a long period of time, I don't think.
Yeah, right. And also the setting itself, like I alluded to before, is a bit strange. I mean, we know in these types of games there is going to be an endless number of bullet sponge type enemies or endgame activities that follow the same sort of route, whereas
it's easier in a sci-fi setting, isn't it? It's easier to have a big bullet sponge because you can just have like a big, like Rancor-looking creature, or just an orb or a floating ball or whatever that's just got infinite health.
Right, and you can make up that has as much health or as little health as you want.
An overall or something, and he's got like infinite health, and you just shooting him in the head 100 times, which is what was going on in the Division. It just completely ruins the illusion of it being anything, to be honest, because it just becomes a farce.
Exactly. So whilst it's the same thing in principle, just how it's portrayed and executed doesn't quite hold me as much, just basically because of that reason more than anything else.
I just think the gameplay in general of the game, though, is just not good enough. I just don't
Yeah,
think
it's not on the level of Destiny in terms of the Division, but I think Anthem has to start well. If Anthem comes out and it's confusing and it doesn't grab you straight away, and everybody who is possibly tempted to sort of leave Destiny or not pick up the Division because they can jump into Anthem instead, if the gameplay isn't smooth, if it's clunky, if it doesn't feel new and different, if it doesn't sort of grab you instantly, then I think it could easily fall by the wayside.
Have many of these games managed to do that though when they've initially come out? I mean, I read half the time that they improve as they go along, and then they get gamers to to come back to try the experience again. But most of the time when they're uh, brand new, that they tend to fall flat of expectations.
I think that can sometimes be the players themselves setting the expectations too much because they expect too much too soon and to be able to just jump into everything from the get-go, which is one side of the argument. I think from my own experience and from the people that I play with so regularly, it's not so much being able to start and have all of these wonderful options available to you and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to give you everything at the beginning, but it can't feel like the vanilla Destiny game. It can't feel like the vanilla Division game because they didn't feel like anything to begin with, and that's everybody's problem from back then, is that it took too long. So Anthem, as a completely sort of fresh off the bat franchise, it has to deliver more quickly, more often than those games did. It doesn't need to be have everything available to you on day one, but it has to be able to supply it on a more frequent basis and stop the same complaints from happening again with another shared world shooter game. Like, they've got all of the examples, the bad examples of what people don't like and what hasn't worked. So I would like to think that, with no sort of stigma attached to the Anthem name, they can not fall foul of the same errors that's been made by their sort of biggest competition so far.
Well, they've had enough time, haven't they, to like you say, see what the competition did wrong, see what they did right, and to implement different elements into their game that
I-
should be a hit with gamers.
I'd completely agree with what Perk said, though, about Anthem has to start off strong. It cannot have the same problems Division had when it first came out, or even Destiny 2 for that matter. Because the advantage Destiny 2 had, it could kind of in a way afford to have a slow start because of the popularity of Destiny 1. And people knew that the Taken King, was a really big expansion for Destiny that improved a lot. And they probably expected that the same thing to happen to Destiny 2, which it seems like it has. But Anthem isn't going to have that leeway. Anthem doesn't have anything behind it to give that leeway, just as the Division didn't, and that's where the Division kind of failed in a way. But I think Anthem has to start out strong, and it has to, like Pert said, deliver regularly. Probably even more regularly than Destiny. It probably has to do more than Destiny, to be honest, to keep up with it. As far-fetched as that sounds, because the base for Destiny's already there. Anthem has to create its own base, and it has to constantly outperform Destiny for me to be as popular as it.
I think one of the chips on Anthem's shoulder is who's on the front of the box. EA. They are just like a completely and utterly tainted name in gaming, especially when it comes to online. So it's going to be interesting to see what it does to EA's reputation if it doesn't work at launch. Because people
That's a
are
good
just sick of
point.
it. The EA servers are already like a comedy in joke amongst gamers anyway, because they just never work. So it'd be interesting to see if they can finally release a game at launch where the servers actually hold up.
It's a good point, but I would argue that it's the same with Destiny and Activision. Activision are a tainted company that no one really likes, and
No, you can say what
Destiny
you want about
managed to
Activision.
survive.
They're a very greedy company, but they don't usually have many server issues, to be honest. If you're talking
No,
about
that's very
Activision,
true.
I have not remembered
That's
them
true.
having any sort of big server outage that I can remember off the top of my head. Because don't forget, they merged with Blizzard, haven't they? So they do the World of Warcraft stuff as well. So I can't really remember any issues with Activision servers, to be fair.
I can't remember any issues with Call of Duty servers either, to be
I was
honest.
expecting there to be.
So
I was like, what? Call of Duty with 100 people? This is
Yeah,
going to
and it's
out.
worked
And there's
pretty much
a few hitches, but all in
seamlessly.
all, really good.
Yeah, it's a good point there.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting to see how Anthem does when it comes out. Moving on to another one, then there was also a trailer for Crash Team Racing, which I know we're all quite happy about. A game we loved as a kid, a bit of nostalgia there for us. What are our thoughts on it?
Amazing. I was like a little kid at Christmas on that trailer.
Happy day.
Oh, I love that game so much. It's my favorite car racer ever. Probably one of my favorite racing games ever. So much nostalgia with that one. And it looked really good. That's the thing as well. It looked really good what they've done to it. It was a nice overhaul, similar to the Insane Trilogy. It just looks really nice now, and the fact that you can race online. I mean, amazing. That's what people asked for, didn't they? They said if there's going to be a remake, we want online play, and that's amazing.
I'm more shocked that they didn't replace online play with split screen. They've actually got both for once.
Yeah, fantastic.
Because usually they get rid of split screen and say, well, you've got online, just play it online. It's nice to see one game, out of every 1,000 that are released these days with that actual split screen.
Yeah.
I think Crash Team Racing obviously was made around split screen back in the day, and that's why we all loved it so much. But I think it couldn't have come back without online play. But I think, like Matty said there, it's really cool that they've sort of nodded to the original there and not just ditched what made it so much fun in the first place.
It was such a fun game, though. I mean, the gameplay loop was so fun in that game. Even I don't know how much you remember the game at all, but even I remember the main campaign was really interesting as well. There was actually like a story there and stuff, which was pretty cool. It was quite fun to go through the campaign races and things. So, especially when you're a kid, it might not have the same impact now, but it was fun as a kid.
It's just a shame that it got so heavily leaked beforehand. Like, it's been rumored for 5 months that it was coming out. So
it wasn't a massive surprise. I was still really happy though. I was still really excited. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely reminds me of good times growing up. I'm sure me and Matty had many a race on that game when we were kids.
Yeah.
So
now is the time for gaming nostalgia though, because we are the target audience for these games, because these are the games that we played, when we were 10, 11 sort of age, even younger. And now we're all in our mid-20s, early 30s. The people that played these games have now got money in their pocket, so it's no surprise that they're trying to cash in on that burst of nostalgia. No. It's just a case of when's it going to end? What aren't they going to remake?
That is true. I wonder when the remakes will stop, but at the moment they're proving to be a success, aren't they? Look at Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, recent games.
Yeah. The release date of that game as well is perfect for me because it's my birthday, so perfect birthday present for me.
Yeah,
June 21st.
Just for you, mate.
They did. I think that's true.
Hey, that was nice.
They've done it for me.
That was very nice of them.
Great birthday present.
It was.
It's the only one you'll be getting.
It might be. I mean, you might be right, but to be honest, I'd be happy with that. I'd be happy with that as my only birthday present. I'd be as happy as anything with that. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad one, that's for sure. Well, moving on to Obsidian as well. They released a trailer for a new game that they have coming out called The Outer Worlds. Looks like Fallout-inspired sort of game, but
the best way to describe it to people who haven't seen the trailer and what the game's going to be like is Fallout and Borderlands mixed together.
That is exactly what I said
that is
as well.
perfect.
That is literally
100%.
exactly the analogy I used when I first saw it. It looks awesome. I think it looked really good. Really impressed with how it looked.
I was surprised that it's such a large-scale project, to be honest, considering, one, they've just recently been acquired by Microsoft, and two, they're not that big a studio. I mean, I know they made Fallout New Vegas, but it looks like quite a substantial game, to be honest with you.
Apparently they've been working on this for quite a long time, haven't they? It's been in the pipeline for quite a while, this game.
Yeah, hopefully it's not as buggy as New Vegas. Just pray.
No, I wouldn't hold your hopes up on that one, but it does look like... Sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Oh, I was just going to mention, or even Knights of the Old Republic 2 they made. And they didn't have long to make that game either, so they weren't able to finish it the way they wanted it.
No. But if you've ever played Fallout New Vegas, it just reminded me of that in space, to be honest. But that's fine, because Fallout New Vegas was a great game, so really fun to play.
I know it's funny as well how it literally at the start of the game, the trailer, it said from the creators of the original Fallout and Fallout New Vegas, like instantly trying to distance themselves from Bethesda. We've got nothing to do with Bethesda.
Right,
Yeah.
like don't
It's
associate
Fallout
us with that.
76.
76 has
Yeah, that's
nothing
true.
to do with us. Don't know who they are.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because my only worry with this is that it's going to come out. Say if it comes out to a massive fanfare, like maybe it can probably come out in a couple of years, something like that, maybe. Or did it say 2019?
2019,
I don't know if it did
yeah.
or not.
I
It
think
did say
yeah,
2019.
I think
It
if
did.
it's being advertised for PS4 and Xbox One, it'll be 2019.
Yeah.
Because they haven't got that long left. They're not going
No.
to advertise it for PS4 and Xbox One if it's out in like 2021 or something, because they probably won't exist.
I don't know if anyone else though. I just have this scenario in my head. I can envisage it now. That this game's going to be great, and then obviously this is going to be the last game they develop, isn't it, for PS4 before they work on exclusives for Microsoft. I can imagine this being their great game, and then after that, I can imagine it being maybe average stuff, and Microsoft got all the average stuff.
Now, like, do Microsoft own this IP? Have they taken full control of Obsidian? Is this now their IP?
That is an interesting
That's a
point.
good question.
Mm.
Who knows? Because if it is their
Don't
IP,
know.
it might be on Game Pass.
Yeah. Hey, that would be good. Wouldn't mind that.
That would be a massive win for them, but I wouldn't be 100% sure on that. I don't know. There's probably some dealing. I mean, this game was obviously, it's been in
Yeah,
development
they
far
probably
before.
already. Obviously,
the deal
the Obsidian
in
aren't a
place.
publisher, so
No.
I don't know in the trailer. Like, did it show a publisher? Was it like Gearbox or something?
I didn't
Or
see any
anything
I
like
didn't
publisher
that?
notice it.
in the trailer.
Yeah, didn't notice
Because
it.
it seemed like if it was being published by like an Activision or something, there'd at least be some sort of name call out or something.
It's
at
very
the end of the
strange.
trailer, so.
I mean, Microsoft, you would imagine haven't took publishing. They haven't took publishing rights, have they, for this game? Because if
Maybe
so,
they have,
then
and just if and they've just said if you've already developed it for PS4 and Steam,
Yeah.
then you might as well just carry on and we'll put it.
well,
on
it's
Game Pass
interesting, isn't
still.
it? Because they said the same thing with We Happy Few, wasn't it? They sort of allowed it, didn't they, to be on PlayStation? Because they could have easily said no, from what we can tell, but they didn't because it was already in development before Microsoft acquired the studio.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that folds or unfolds. So there's two little tidbits I just wanted to mention because obviously we spoke about Dragon Age last week, and there was a teaser trailer for it. It wasn't really exciting.
I don't even know if you'd call it. Was it even really a teaser? I mean, I suppose it was a teaser, but it was
Yeah,
nothing
if you
really,
know
was
Dragon
it?
Age.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah. It was just
I mean-
BioWare saying to gamers, "We are trying to make Dragon Age.
Yeah.
Please help. Don't let EA close us down."
Pretty much.
A plea
Pretty
for
much a
help.
message. It might even be a message to EA saying, well, it's out there now, so if you try and cancel it, then it's going to be on you.
Yeah, it wasn't.
You'll see it on like
exciting.
GoFundMe or something soon.
Probably. Wouldn't be surprised. But, I mean, we can't. There's nothing we can say about it, is there really? I mean,
No,
we literally saw nothing on it.
I just wanted to bring it up because obviously we spoke about it at a bit of length, didn't we, last week? But
Oh, yeah.
it was kind of disappointing, to be honest.
By all reports, the game's at least 3 years away. So,
That'll be a next gen game.
Yeah, definitely sounds that
look
way.
forward to it. I mean, I love Dragon Age, so I'm looking forward to whenever it inevitably comes out. Well, hopefully it comes out anyway. So,
Yep, me and you both. And the last bit that I wanted to ask, just a fun little question, because I I heard the word athlete get branded, and I wanted to know, are you really an athlete if you compete in esports?
I'm going to say yes because of the amount of dedication they have to put into it. Now, I know there's going to be many people out there that are cynics and say, well, it's not athletes because you basically sat on your arse all day, but there's a lot more that goes into it than that. These people now, the esports people, they're coached by people. They have diet plans. They have all sorts of things. I don't know if you've read into it at all, and okay, you can argue it's a sedentary thing, isn't it? They're not actually doing anything really, but they are playing games for 8 to 10 hours a day on their chosen game, and it is their profession. So you could argue
They have mastered the
it is.
skill.
They are an athlete. Yeah, that would be my opinion on it.
Yeah, I'm in awe of some of the skills of some of the esports players, to be honest, especially like the Rocket League ones. And I'm just like, what? How are they even doing this? I think I'm pretty decent at Rocket League myself, but then I see these people on MLG finals, and I'm just like, what on earth is this? I don't even know how they're actually doing this.
Yeah, so that's a yes from you then too. Yeah.
Yeah, the comparison I always use is it's like Sky Sports shows darts.
I was going to say about darts.
Yeah, it's like most of the people that play darts are about 30 stone and have about 20 pints before they start throwing them. But that, it's still a sport, isn't it? So it's a hot. I don't know. It just athlete has a connotation because of like the Olympics and stuff. Like long jumpers, or someone sprinting or running, some sort of physical activity. But maybe it's the wrong definition. But I think they definitely should be put in the same bracket because, like Sud said, in terms of dedication and training, they probably train as much as anybody. It's like 10 hours a day.
Yeah, it is a hell of a lot. How about you, Perks? Where do you fall on the subject? Athlete or not?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add than what the guys have already said. I think they've covered it perfectly. Athlete is, as a word, is typically someone that would be associated with an Olympic event or a football player, rugby, whichever sport you're into. But there has to be something to describe them because these guys and girls are professionals at the end of the day. They're not just to sort of generalize the person who sits at home in their basement or their mum's basement, all day, every day. And these are the pinnacle of gaming now. So they need to be respected as such. Maybe athlete isn't the correct word, but maybe there's a better one out there to describe them. But yeah, absolutely. They deserve the credit.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because they definitely did start in the mum's basement. That's what's funny about it.
Yeah, but they're
They
not
all
there
started
now.
out like
They've
that.
come a long way.
No, I know. That's my point. It's
They've got
funny
their
though,
own
isn't it?
homes.
How that's how they started.
They've
They're
got
in
their own basement now.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, that's true.
They're going to have their own sort of success story film, and they're just there in their mum's face.
With Doritos and Mountain Dew poured all over them. Yeah.
Crying.
Yeah.
It shows how far it's come, though, doesn't it, really? I mean, I know it's still a bit of a joke that people like to make, but now there is that sort of platform for them to show off how high a level they actually are that has sort of developed and evolved over the years. So
yeah, it's a platform that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Because I said to you, Perks, on numerous occasions, like, we're both at our time, when we were the 15-year-old kids with Mountain Dew and Doritos, we were both very good at particular games. But if there was that gateway of say, hey, this is a legitimate career path, this is a legitimate career choice where you can get ridiculously good at this game, dedicate 10 hours a day to it or whatever, and you can actually, try and make your way as a professional, I might have chose it. But it didn't exist back then. It was a joke. It was literally like there was no money in it. Even like the top tournaments, you'd win like $10,000 or something, and now it's millions. So it has just evolved so quickly in such a short space of time.
So moving on to our next topic, and it actually involves Destiny 2's new DLC. I've seen one YouTube video that claimed that it was unplayable for 95% of Destiny players, and there's been a bit of a fuss about this, that they can't access certain parts of the DLC, and as a result, they have to do some more grinding. Is this true, Perks? That's my first question on the subject. Is this true?
It is true to an extent, yeah.
Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
I think
Kurt
what
Angle
I
with
will
us.
say, I mean, obviously we'll go into a lot more detail with it, is that Bungie have gone away from their normal type expansions, and from the Black Armory onwards for at least the next sort of 9 months or so. So they have another 2 expansions, if you can even call them that anymore, planned along these same lines. Is that now they're releasing Endgame expansions rather than expansions in general. So there needs to be that sort of clarity, which as a hardcore player, I understood before the Black Armory released. But if there was a casual player or a more sort of, intermediate level, that was probably lost on them. And that's probably why the surprise and the hate from the get-go on the Black Armory, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got an instant question for you.
Sure.
Why not just have a system where if you want to play the end game content, you can create a character that's level 50 or whatever the level needed is straight away?
Yeah, so what they actually have is with Forsaken, which is, the major DLC release or the major expansion, is if you sort of play Destiny 2 on launch or, a couple of weeks in, and you didn't like it, and you thought for Forsaken, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give that a try, but I'm going to be too far away, you can actually use there's a mechanic within the game that gives you the instant level up, so you can experience the end game content, sort of not the end game content, but the new content, to rephrase. So if you haven't played Destiny 2, any kind of time since release, and you want to jump into Forsaken, that's fine, you can. But the Black Armory is an expansion of endgame content to what was already endgame in Forsaken. So when you reach the end of what Forsaken has to offer, the Black Armory is for you. If you haven't reached the end of Forsaken, then you're absolutely going to find those power level limitations, and whether you've bought the content or not, it's inaccessible, which is
Do you think you should be able
obviously
to
a
buy
grey
it
area.
or access it?
I would personally, I'm going to deflect a little bit because I'm not entirely sure that this is the best way of delivering content. So I can't defend what it is currently because I'm not entirely sure that I buy into it myself because it's still fresh, it's still new. But one thing's for sure is that it's different to what Bungie have done previously, and I think they're sort of finding out, not the hard way, but they're learning pretty quickly that whilst people didn't like the old system of expansions and the old way they delivered things, they also probably don't like this either. But what I would say on that is that it's not just a case of, wanting to have your cake and eat it at the same time. People complain so much about the old style, they got a new style, and now they complain about that as well. So it does seem like it's going to be quite
I
hard
think
to,
you're
to
always going to
please
get people
anybody.
complaining with it, mate. It's
Yeah.
like Destiny's remaining player base. Like I feel like this is some sort of realistic radio show now, like Radio 5 Live, and we're discussing, like health of the NHS, and we've got some expert to come in and discuss it because this is literally the only game that you play. And I know you're going to defend it to the hilt, but the only people left that play Destiny are hardcore players. I'm actually with you. I don't understand why people are moaning about this in the first place. I just think Destiny as a whole is not going to sell well. The sequel or anything. I think it's just that hardcore player base left now, and that's all you'll ever have. So
I think I'd
Yeah.
disagree with
personal
that, to be
opinion.
honest.
I
personally.
no. You can disagree. It's absolutely fine. But I just think Destiny. The best way I described it with Destiny 1 and 2, it's like buying a bag of Walker's crisps because it looks full, but then when you open it, it's just 70% fucking air inside, and you only get 30% crisps. That's what it was like with Destiny 1, it's what it's like with Destiny 2, and then you've got walkers coming and saying, sorry Matt, we know you've bought this bag of crisps and we know you wanted it to be full, but the rest of the crisps are coming soon. You just have to wait. You have to wait a year and we'll give you the rest of the crisps later on. I don't think you should be able to charge full price for games that not necessarily aren't finished, but games that they know they're releasing bare bones, and they know in like 6 months they're going to release, DLC that completes in abbreviation marks the game. I just think the game should be sold as a completed product, or it should be sold at a reduced price. And it's not just Destiny that's culprit of this. There's other games that do it as well. I've got no doubt that Anthem will probably do it. They'll be like, oh, sorry, guys, this is half the game. If you want the rest of the game, you've got to buy the expansion pass. It's just a really crap trend in modern gaming. If you're not going to release the full game on day one, don't charge full price for it, because it's not fair and it's deceiving consumers.
I agree with most of your points there, Mark. The one point I don't agree on, though, is I don't agree with the part about the next game's sales. I think as soon as another year or so goes by and we see the reveal trailer for Destiny 3, it'll be one of the most viewed trailers on YouTube. It'll be one of the most viewed trailers on most game sites. People will be excited for it. You'll get that initial buzz again, and the game will probably have initial good sales. I think where one area I would say where I don't think the game is going to do as well as Activision first thought it was going to do when it was first revealed and announced.
Well,
I say that. I don't think the game's done as well as they thought it was going to do.
Yeah, it's way underneath what they expected.
It's underneath it, but I still think you're going to get high initial sales in the next game. I still think there's going to be a lot of interest, especially if it's on new hardware. If the game looks a lot better on new hardware and things like that, that'll interest people. And the possibilities with a shared world game on next gen hardware, who knows what they can do. So I still think there's going to be a good buzz around the next Destiny.
How do you feel about that, Perks? Matty mentioned that he thinks that only hardcore players remain. How would you respond to that? Because obviously you play the game a lot more than we do.
Yeah, so obviously it's easy for me to see from a hardcore player's point of view, because that's absolutely what I am. And it's percentages wise, right? Destiny, and this goes for games also like The Division and Anthem and any other game that would fall into that genre in time to come. The main player base will always be the hardcore players. It won't be the casual players. It won't be the players who pick it up 2 or 3 times a week, because they just can't keep up. So whilst there are still casual players on Destiny, and there are still those players who find themselves in the middle ground, who aren't quite at the beginning, but they're not quite at the end game stuff either, the highest percentage of players will always be in the hardcore category. So that will never change with games like this, and this genre in particular, sort of when you strip back the name and what the game actually is itself, simply because of the investment that they require. Like, you can't play Destiny 2 casually and reach the end game stuff. You're not going to be able to play Anthem casually and reach the end game stuff. That's just not going to happen. It's not what these games are. And you only have to look at a game like sort of World of Warcraft as the prime example in that bracket. You can't just play every now and then and be a hardcore player. That they're the players who are sort of in it from the beginning to the end, which is the category that I'm in. And yeah, that they will be the players who are considered to be there because it's the highest percentage bracket, and that's never going to change.
I understand your point. They're saying, you're not going to be able to play it now and then and get to the end game content. But I feel like the problem with Destiny is that you can't just play it now and then at all. You're either all in or you just don't play it at all. I don't think that's a consistent method of getting people to play the game. It just feels
right.
like
So I actually agree. I agree, and I think that's the same problem like with the games that we've talked about already, and like I've just mentioned. It's not necessarily a Destiny problem or what will undoubtedly be an Anthem problem and a Division problem. It's the problem of a shared world shooter, in fact, and it's why it can't ever sort of reach the heights that you would hope for it, because you can't just pick it up every now and then. You don't appeal to the mass market. It's a hardcore experience, and that's it.
Items. I really don't know why they don't just have endgame items that are cosmetic only, because people are still trying to get them. I don't know why game items are just always have to be game-breaking weapons that, this weapon's like 3 times better than, like, I know in Destiny they tried to trick everyone. I remember when Destiny 1 came out and it went, right guys, PvP is going to be fair and it's going to be balanced because all the weapons are going to be nerfed and everyone's going to be playing with the same weapons. That's a load of bollocks. We both know that's a load of bollocks. And they're not even trying to pretend that that's a thing anymore, from what I understand. It's like You might yeah, all the weapons do the same damage, but you have some weapons that have like a 50 times higher fire rate that you can only get by doing like a raid or something. So it's just completely
I
mentally
think
pointless.
the PvP side of things is something you could talk about for days on end, really. But there's no sort of in the here and the now situation in which in PvP all the guns do the same damage. For example, if you have a hand cannon, it doesn't do the same damage as another hand cannon. There's variables like there is with any game. They have different rounds per minute, different impacts, different rate of fires. Everything sort of leads into it, and PvP is very different because there's so many different types of weapon and there's so many different sort of archetypes of a hand cannon or of an assault rifle. And obviously what sort of separates it further from that is the classes and the subclasses and so on. So it's never going to be a clear cut PvP experience. There's always going to be a lot of variables to it.
Like Sud always alludes to this, like every time we talk about Destiny, that the gameplay is so strong. Well, if the gameplay is so strong, back the gameplay and have it like Fortnite. People play Fortnite every single day. It's growing and growing and growing and growing, and there hasn't been one point in Fortnite where you can unlock a weapon that's better than anyone else's weapon. All the unlocks are purely cosmetic, and people still try and get them because if you're playing it with your friends, you want these cosmetic items that they don't have. So I don't understand why it's not an option to just have cosmetic progression in these games, as opposed to like, yes, have like levels of weapons, but have don't have such a massive gap between the best and the worst weapons. And then a lot of the like items that you get from raids and like timed events are cosmetic. And then once that raid goes, if it's like a timed raid, then that cosmetic item goes forever because it keeps people coming back and wanting to unlock the items. That's how they do it in Fortnite, and people are still playing. It's working for them. But it also means that, yes, little Jimmy, sorry to mention him again, has got
He's
every skin in
back.
Fortnite. Yeah, he's got the Skull Reaper costume. He's got, all the costumes in the game. He's got all the skins in the game. He's got all the dancers in the game. But if I pick up a shotgun and shoot him in the air, he'll die. You know what I mean? It's that level playing field between everyone. So it feels like, even though I haven't played Fortnite for 6 months, I can jump back in and, still feel like I can kill people, still feel like I can actually participate in the game.
I think Fortnite is a bit more, well, a lot more pick up and play anyway than a sort of PvP like Destiny would be, because the learning curve for a game like that is extreme, and it's not just a case of, I haven't been with the game for a year, I'll play it and I'll know what I'm doing. You do have to educate yourself, and it's a long sort of pathway. On your point about the cosmetic stuff, Destiny does actually have sort of timed cosmetic items and things that you can collect and sort of achieve and compare and contrast with friends and such going forward. That's not really a part of the game that I'm a massive advocate of. I don't really care so much myself about it, but people do, and they spend money on on the microtransactions that exist within the game, which is contentious enough as it is, and they can also be unlocked through just gameplay progression anyway. So I think the counterpoint would be that those things do actually exist within Destiny, but there's just also more than just those things.
I think one question I'd like to ask Perks, and it's more about the next Destiny and the future of it, really. How do you think, because you obviously talk to the community daily, you know exactly what's going on in the game, you know how the community are feeling about it, things like that, the people you speak to. What do you think the difference is going to be sort of between how Destiny 2 is going to be perceived, well, how Destiny 2 was perceived at launch from Destiny 1, and how Destiny 3 is going to be perceived from Destiny 2 at launch? Do you think there's going to be the same level of interest in Destiny 3? Do you think it's going to be a drop? Do you think there's going to be a higher interest from the hardcore, or what's your viewing on that?
I definitely think that regardless of your love, hate, or somewhere in between for Destiny or Destiny 2, Destiny 3 will have interest, right? Because there's going to be enough time between the launch of Destiny 2 and the launch of Destiny 3. And if you don't sort of pay attention to anything in between, if you're casual and you switched off right at the beginning, in 3 years' time from the launch of Destiny 2 to number 3, you're going to be interested again. They're going to drop their really cool looking trailers like they always do, because Bungie excels with its sort of teasers and trailers, and people will be interested again. There's always this sort of reluctance with things like this that I find, is that unless they find a way of doing things differently from the beginning, the same trend probably will occur, in the sense that Destiny 1 launches it has a shed loads of sales, and within a couple of weeks, the player base is on its knees.
Yeah, the
Destiny
trend.
2 follows suit, so it's hard for them to break that because Destiny 3 is already in development and they're already doing a bunch of stuff in relation to that. So unless they've drastically changed things up from the beginning, it's difficult to imagine that that trend will break. But obviously, we can all hope that it will, because that will just present a much better game for everybody and not just the hardcore players.
The fact that it's going to be on probably going to be on new hardware gives me a bit of hope for change, because with new hardware you always get new possibilities. Now the game could be a cross-gen game, which would throw up an argument: should it be a cross-gen game or should it just be next-gen? But if it is just a next-gen game, for example, that should help to alleviate some of the concerns, because hopefully they'll be able to do things on next-gen hardware they weren't able to do on this gen.
Right. I think they're not going to change up too much in terms of their engine, because things are already in development, and it's notable that if you actually look into it, Bungie have stated on numerous occasions now, whether this is a smokescreen or not, it remains up to interpretation. But they've actually said how difficult Destiny is a game to develop for, because the engine isn't great by all accounts. The main thing from a performance improvement sort of thing is that they have to be able to hit 60 FPS on the next gen consoles, like it is on PC.
100%.
Because you look at Destiny on the PlayStation or the Xbox in comparison to the PC, and it looks like a different game. So regardless of anything else, even if that was the only improvement that they could bring with a next gen experience, then that would tick enough boxes for me.
Yeah, well, luckily for you, I think that's what the next generation of consoles are going to be focused on, is actual performance, because I feel like we're getting to a point of diminishing returns when it comes to visuals. Like, we're not hit the uncanny valley yet, but the more and more you pump into visuals, you're not going to see that much of a difference. Whereas if every game is finally 60 FPS, that's going to be a real big game changer. If all the consoles have good CPUs, because you can start improving on the things that have been poor in games for years, like AI. If you have big CPUs, these games like Fortnite, these big battle royale games, are going to run a hell of a lot better on consoles. Instead of having 100 players in Black Ops or whatever, you might be able to have 1,000 with a better CPU. So it's going to work
Imagine the
really
size of the
well.
map with stuff like that.
Yeah, it really well for like
There
sort
for
of
days.
world shooters and MMOs. If you can have an MMO where you're in the tower in Destiny and there's 1,000 people in there at once or something, it is the future. They need to improve on the CPUs. They have needed to improve on the CPUs for years. So hopefully they do it.
But one question I did want to ask you, Perks, we asked it a few weeks ago on our first episode, and it was around: is Destiny, or has Destiny been a success for Bungie? And obviously, like Sud mentioned, you talk to the community on a daily basis. What is the thought behind that from you?
Just before you answer, Perks, can I just could you answer also just one added thing? Obviously, you could answer
This
Luke's about has
sounds
it
like
been
a
a
police
success for.
interrogation.
Just jumping in on him there. Like, your question's not important
This sounds
anymore.
Well,
like
no,
this
because
actually
I think
sounds
it's an
like a
important.
police interrogation.
Yeah, but I think it's an important distinction to make. Like, between what I'd like answered is obviously Luke's question about has it been successful for Bungie, but also I'd like answered has it been successful for Activision, because I think there's two different answers to that.
Right. Well, to try and answer both questions in a concise way as possible, is that Bungie and Activision, quite evidently, based on recent reports, have different interpretations of success and what they consider to be going well and what the other one not so much thinks about that. So Destiny as a whole, for the player base, is, yes, it's successful, but in parts, it's not successful from start to finish. And if we look at Destiny in terms of the franchise, and then not broken up into 3 years of Destiny 1 and just over a year of Destiny 2, for the 4 years it's been there, is that there has been successful times, but there's been also really unsuccessful times, and times where the game just hasn't been fun. So from a player-based perspective, and I can sort of speak with a great sort of clarity on this because I'm so invested in it myself, that is how people feel. Nobody thinks it's been fantastic from day one. Nobody thinks it's been terrible from day one. What I would say from my personal point of view is that I think that there's probably been more bad times than good, but the good times have been a lot better than the bad times have been bad. So it kind of outweighs in that sense for me personally. In terms of the question as a whole, for Bungie and for Activision, has Destiny been a success? Probably not, because I personally would say that they expected this to be the next big thing. So
Yeah.
4 years ago, when Destiny launched, my interpretation of it was that they expected this to be the game. So that when you speak to your friends about games, or when you're, out at the bar and you're catching up about what games you're playing, it's, oh, did you see that new thing in Destiny? Did you see where we got to in Destiny? It never got there. Limitations were too clear from day one of vanilla Destiny 1 that it was never going to reach those heights. So I don't think it's been effective, because I think they would have envisaged that Destiny is thing that came before it. In that sense, it couldn't possibly be considered success.
I would agree. That's actually a point that I think it was the first episode that we talked about Destiny, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
That's actually a point I brought up. It's the answer I thought you'd say, actually, that maybe from Bungie's point of view it has been a success, but from Activision's probably not. Because I agree with Pert's statement about I think Activision thought this was going to be the game, the big, massive, huge game of the generation, and it's been a big game. Don't get me wrong; it's been one of the biggest games of the generation, but it's not the game. It's not the one everyone's talking about, and we all know what game is the one everyone's talking about: Fortnite. And it's not the Fortnite of the generation. Exactly. It's not the It's not that game of the generation. I think for Activision that would probably be a disappointment. So yeah, I'd agree with that.
Do you think they're going to do Battle Royale in the next Destiny, Perks?
No, I'm going to say they won't do that. I'm quite confident about that. I just don't think the game leans towards it, and
You just have like
I wouldn't like it.
Or something.
I mean, it would be interesting if they had random strike bosses floating around to wipe players out. That would be kind of cool. But in terms of the game as a whole, I just don't think it needs Battle Royale, and I don't even think if they did sort of try and make a hard push on Battle Royale, that it would compete. I know we're talking years in the future with Destiny 3, but it wouldn't compete with what we see now from the high-end Battle Royale games.
I've got what you said before stuck in my head, Perks. Hope for change. Hope for change. That sounds like the Destiny 3 advertising campaign. It's just you with like the little.
Sounds like you're running for Prime
running
Minister.
for office.
Yeah.
Just hope for change. Destiny 3.
Vote for me, and I will hopefully bring change. No promises though.
Vote for me, and you won't have to grind 100 hours to play the first mission.
Maybe.
Yeah, so I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to say I'm going to change it. I'll get voted in, and then I'm just going to do the same thing again and trick everybody. So,
just after
sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah.
Jokes on you guys.
At the end of every sentence, you literally just say, "Yeah, blah, maybe."
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Is that the interrogation on Destiny over now? Can I like end this cassette? Tell me, James, what happened on the 10th of October 2018? It says on your games records that you were playing Destiny for 16 hours straight. What
to
happened?
Be fair, I think it's fair to get someone's take on it who's actually played the game and enjoys it. Because those three.
Yeah, well, we're not going to find a bigger expert on Destiny. I mean, even if we got someone in from Bungie, they'd probably know less about it.
They probably know less. Yeah. That's actually a good point. Probably played it less.
Well, they definitely played it less. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point.
Well, I feel like we got more of a balanced view there, or at least it balances out from our initial view from the first show. So.
Yeah, can we just promise not to talk about Destiny ever again until there's actually some decent news? Because I feel like we're becoming Destiny heavy. The Destiny show with James Perkins as host.
Yeah, right. Coming to take over now. But I think that just shows you, though, even though the game isn't so big, it's still there. It's still prominent.
Definitely.
It is, and we will finish today up with a talk about the Avengers Endgame trailer. So a little bit of movie news for us here. What were our thoughts of it? I thought it was a great trailer, to be honest. I'm quite excited for the film. How about you guys?
Did you see the petition to NASA to save Tony
Stark? Oh, I did.
From space?
They replied on Twitter.
Yeah, I saw that.
They replied on Twitter as well.
Oh, did they? What did they say?
Something like, send a mayday to us and we'll send someone up to get him, or something along those lines.
It was a good trailer, though, wasn't it? It was what I expected. I didn't expect anything less. I thought it was going to be a good trailer. It was. I didn't actually need the trailer to know that I was going to look forward to the film, but because I'm really hyped for that film. I really enjoyed the first Avengers.
I can't believe it's been so long since the first one. The last one, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, the last one, yeah. But I think we're all looking forward to it, aren't we? We're all looking forward to seeing what happens. I just hope it's not. I just hope it's not going to be a Mass Effect 3 type ending or something like that.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's
Just a
not going
bit-
to be because you can't have a multiple choice ending in the cinema.
Well, no, but I mean, I just hope it's not going to be a disappointing ending like that, where everyone leaves thinking, "Oh, what a waste of time."
Everyone just gets like a buzz quiz show, like buzzer, when they go into the cinema, and it's like, "What's this for?" And it gets to the end, and it's just 3 little generic pathways that they can walk down. Please.
Well,
vote
the thing
now.
is, though, about this, we know at the end of this film that line is ending, isn't it? The line of, they're rebooting it, aren't they? After this, the universe, so they can literally do anything they want, really.
Cap and
get away
Iron
with
Man
it.
aren't making it out of this film alive.
Do you
Well,
think
that's what I'm
both of them
saying.
are dying? I don't.
I think both will die. What do you think? Like one will hang up?
I think one might survive. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can envisage maybe Captain America. I think it's more likely Captain America survives personally.
I think Cap's dying. I think it's more likely Tony will. Well, Iron Man will.
I think
walk away.
Iron Man might go. But
I'm just going to say on that I think if they were going to kill Iron Man, then that would have been a perfect opportunity to do it in the previous film because it was right there for them, and now
I feel
it's
like
not.
Iron Man's going to have a
so-
massive part to play in like saving everyone.
yeah, I'd agree with that. That's why I think he might go. I think it might be like a sacrificial lamb type scenario.
I'm not so sure because I think you lose the shock. I mean, he's already basically nearly been dead once, right? And that was such a big part of the previous film where it's like to then actually kill him is a bit like, okay, then.
I would agree, but haven't they pretty much all been nearly dead at different parts?
Yeah, but it was
the
such
last,
a
like, 3 or
big
4
part,
films.
right? In that battle that they had
Yeah.
with Thanos,
yeah.
and it was.
You're right.
Yeah, I just think it loses its effect for me. If they almost kill him and everybody thinks he's going to die and then they don't, and then in the next film they say, oh, by the way, yeah, he's going to die now. That to me is just a bit like, be a bit more surprising with things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time to go until the film comes out. So obviously this situation could change, but it feels like they've revealed nothing, which is a good thing because
That's
I'm
good.
sick of trailers revealing like half the movie or half the game before it comes out. I want to see a trailer to get hyped. I don't want to spoil half the film for myself.
That's true.
It was kind of like the complaint with Batman v Superman. I mean, I know everyone knew at the end they all become friends and fight together, but even in the trailer they gave that away.
Yeah. Well, I mean that film was
disappointing to say the
it
least.
was a very disappointing film.
But I'm just I'm interested to see in this Avengers film what the objective even is. Is it just to get everyone back? Is there going to be a villain? Because Thanos is done.
Well, I
He's
assume
just sitting on the
he
beach
is done, but
like what's he got to do with anything now?
there's going to be some scenario though where they're going to find some. I imagine they're going to find some way of making it. There's a possibility they could bring him back, and Thanos is going to be like, "Nope, that's not happening," and maybe come back and try and stop it from happening. I mean, maybe it's just going to be a survival. It's all about survival now.
Ant-Man's already been to the quantum realm or whatever, it's called. So that's what they're going to use, I think, to go back in time to save the Avengers or save different people.
Hasn't Doctor Strange still got the
He's dead.
What is it? Yeah, but wasn't it at the end? He still. Why didn't he just? People are still. Why didn't he just use the stone, the time stone?
I don't know.
It's still a bit
use
of a weird
the time stone. He used the time stone to look at every
possible
possible outcome or whatever, every future outcome.
It was like 16 million different things or something, and they lost every time or whatever the numbers.
Apart from
no,
one.
they won one.
Yeah.
And then he tells Tony it's the only way.
So that's what they're going to try and pursue.
Yeah.
I think Doctor Strange is going to have a massive role to play.
Yeah, you would imagine so.
Like fixing everything.
Yeah.
I don't think he's definitely not.
I just want Spidey back. Hope Spidey makes a return in this.
Hope he stays dead.
Well, his second film comes out a few months later, so I think he'll be all right.
I think we all want Spider-Man to play a role, don't we? I want Spider-Man to play a pretty big role in it.
I was so happy when he disappeared.
Honestly,
that was the best part.
We know that Captain Marvel's going to be in this film, and I'm fine with Captain Marvel, a really good Marvel superhero. But I really, really hope that it isn't just some Mary Sue bullshit where she just swoops in and saves everyone and does everything herself. And it's like, power to women. Because, yeah, fair enough, whatever, she's a good hero, but I just can't be arsed with another film like that. I've already had to sit through fucking Star Wars. So, like, just fucking get on with it. I'm bored of it now. Oh man, it's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
agree. She can have a
controversial,
big
but
part to play, but I
I
definitely
can
don't want it
imagine
to
it
be
just like
everything.
swooping down, at the end just to save everyone. It's just like, oh, here she comes, Mary Sue, Invincible Captain Marvel, film's over.
Well, I read reports that she's going to be the most powerful superhero in the
She will be. She's
Marvel
extremely
universe.
Well,
powerful.
Captain Marvel
I'm
is
not
supposed to
bothered
be,
with
isn't it?
that. It's
Yeah.
not the element of her being powerful that I'm bothered about. It's the element of like I just don't want it to be some sort of like pandering social justice warrior moment where she comes down and makes a point of being a woman. It's like, what's the point? You don't need it in the film. Just like in Star Wars, don't need it, and it's wrecked Star Wars, and hopefully it doesn't wreck the Avengers. Because we're all sitting here like, it has like this whole like social justice warrior pandering that did ruin Star Wars. Because the last Star Wars was absolutely shocking.
Yeah, the last Star Wars was
Yeah, and,
extremely disappointing.
Let's not start talking about Star Wars because it makes my blood boil. So
I
Yeah.
don't care if you want the hero of your piece to be a man, a woman, a transsexual, a fucking slime monster. I really don't care. I just don't want, like, the thing that I don't like in modern society is it's like people should just be allowed to make the art and make the film and make the vision that they want. And if their vision includes having a really powerful female heroine, that's absolutely fine. But I feel like the film isn't made on a vision anymore. It's made like, oh, what does society like? What can I put in my film to make sure that it's politically correct? That's not how it works. Just make the film, make the art, and just get on with it. I think that's the best way to make anything.
Tell me a good story. That's it.
Exactly.
That's all I want. It's a good story. Well, I think the Avengers will be a good story, and I'm sure
I
they'll
hope so.
finish off. They'll finish it
I'm
off
confident.
nicely.
I'm confident too.
Not long to wait. Not
Nope.
long to wait at all. So, what is it? March?
March
April?
or April? It's March or April, one of them. I can't remember the exact release date. But
Yeah, because Captain
Already
Marvel's.
going to watch it. Do you want to go and watch it?
It's March,
I don't. This has no relevance to the podcast whatsoever. But are we going to go and watch it at Cheshire Oaks?
You just want to play the Halo game at Cheshire Oaks.
Yeah.
I want to play
that's
the
all you
Halo
want to go
game.
for.
I won't even watch Avengers. I'll just be playing the Halo game. And they'll be like, Matty, come on, we've got to go now. The film's on. I'm just there shooting up all the grunts on the Halo arcade machine.
Like, I'm playing this with one of our fans. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I'm sure we can make that decision nearer the time.
Yeah, I think that's not.
Yeah.
It's
the most
most
You don't have to worry
important
about
of
it
all
now.
decisions.
Yeah.
It's the most important decision. That and the decision to cancel Destiny. Sorry to let you know. It's just been announced now. I'm on IGN. Destiny cancelled. No reason.
No reason. Because there was only me playing, and now I'm coming to do this with you guys, and now there's no one left. So that's
Yeah,
Active
that's
player
cancel.
zero.
User base went to zero.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks for that, guys.
I think that's a good time to finish the podcast. So hopefully, Perks can try and save Destiny.
Yeah, quick, get back on
Quick,
Destiny.
get on it now.
Hope for
Cool.
you.
So, where can people find you on the social media, Sud?
I'm just on Twitter at David10Spud. Yeah, that's me.
How about you, Perks?
You can just cut me out of this part because there's no point. So,
Perks doesn't have social media.
You can just edit that away. I'll just say like whatever.
Can you
Nice
not
to
just
chat.
make
don't
it easy for
edit it
me
away.
so I don't have to
No,
edit
come
it?
on, mate.
Nah, it's too late. It's too late.
I've already told you. You can find JG Perks at Corpse.
How about you, Matt? Where can people find you on social media?
Matty Cheatham, all one word, on Twitter and Instagram. And if people want to add me on Xbox and send me an abusive message, it's Matt Remastered. Please do.
You're
Not
so waiting for that.
discontinued.
You really want people to send you abuse, don't you? You actually hoping
No,
for it,
I
aren't
want
you?
constructive criticism. If that is in the form
Okay.
of abuse, then that's their prerogative. But I'd like some constructive criticism, please.
Fair enough.
That is fair enough. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Leld, LEL3Ds, add a 9 on Instagram. And you can also follow Checkpoint Reached on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CheckReachPod. And then on YouTube, it's just Checkpoint Reached. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and we hope you've enjoyed the show. If you've got any comments or constructive criticism for Matty, feel free to get in touch with either him or the show, and we'll pass it on to him. So yeah, we will be back next week, and have a good rest of the week. Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
That ruined it. Yeah, have a good rest of the week, guys. Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye bye.